Welcome to the Nutritious and Delicious podcast. I'm your host, Bethany, and I've been in the health and wellness space for over 17 years. As a previous health nurse and now certified holistic nutritional consultant, I help clients with their hormone health, fertility, and family health. Join us on this journey as we connect with experts from around the globe, sharing insights and personal stories along the way. So today, I'm here with the amazing Edwina. So welcome.
Hi, Bethany. It's lovely to see you again.
Yeah, it's lovely. I am super excited about this one today. So we'll get into the topic a little bit later, but Edwina is actually an embodied therapist who specializes in natural fertility and IVF. She does counseling and psychology, trauma and womb massage. She actually facilitates retreats as well and workshops and teaches womb and fertility massage globally, which I absolutely love. Edwina also helps women to navigate self-trust, to reconnect with their womb, undergo healing, and cultivate the psychological safety necessary for successful and fulfilling life and pregnancy. So this is going to be a really great topic today because it's all about understanding your cycles, how menstrual phases actually mirror the seasons. So I would love for you to come on today, Edwina, and talk a little bit kind of about how you first got started in this area specifically.
Yes, thank you, Bethany. Well, it's a very long story. However, I'll keep it brief because we're on a podcast. But pretty much in 2013, I had an accident, and that accident left me being unable to walk for 4 years without being aided. So I had a crutch, and I had to stop work. I had to stop everything, and it was a pivotal moment in my life where the universe, I guess, was telling me it's time to do what you're meant to do and not carry on in the corporate world, which is where I was.
Right.
And so over that time, I ended up getting into natural therapies that were going to help my condition, which is complex regional pain syndrome. And through that, it led me on a journey into meditation, which led me into a journey into, I guess, alternative health and natural medicine, and learning the difference between whenever something physically manifests into your body, there's an emotion that's sitting behind it. And that's exactly what was going on with my condition. I was in corporate, I was pushing, I was striving, I was hustling. I never stopped. And so my body decided to stop for me.
Yeah.
And I had an accident, and then I didn't walk for 4 years, and it put me on a completely different path. So my mindset started to change, obviously, over the years. I ended up enrolling into counseling, and I've done lots of trainings around health and well-being and wellness and how these two kind of click together. And so I got into fertility when I had a girlfriend who had been trying to conceive for a long time. She'd recently miscarried, and her husband's worked together. And I said to her, if there's anything that I can do to help you, please let me know. And she went away, and she's one of those friends that really took that for gospel, you know what I mean? So she went away, and she really thought, how can she help me? And she came back, and she said, there's this modality called fertility massage in the UK, and I've heard it's moving through, and it's doing really wonders. Would you have a look at it for me? Now, at the time, although I was working in corporate prior to my accident, I actually was a massage therapist as well. And so fertility massage, I decided to have a look at it. I did some research on it, and I thought, you know what, I'll give it a go. I don't really know, I don't have qualifications in this, but I will give it a go, and we'll see where we go. So that was the start of my journey getting into fertility. I did that. 3 months later, she fell pregnant. She's, oh goodness, her first baby, Fergus, was born. I get goosebumps even talking about it. And that was the first, that was the just that feeling to be able to help somebody who's been trying to conceive at that point in her life for several years. It was just magical. And then I decided, right, I'm going to find the lady who is the director of this fertility massage, and she was in London. And so lo and behold, she was coming to Sydney for training, and I ended up signing up. I did the training with her, and the rest is history. I fell in love with fertility. I fell in love with being able to help women. And as I've gone through the years I then became a trainer. So I'm a trainer, and I teach fertility massage and womb and fertility massage. But as I've gone through the years, I've realized that it's not just about trying to conceive. It's not just the physical and it's also very much the emotional. And if we're
Yeah.
not actually tapping into the trauma, if we're not tapping into what are the blockages and the beliefs behind the woman that's trying to conceive, and that kind of just led me on this pathway and into, I guess, where I am now. But it's not just fertility that I work with. I work with women, for their menstrual cycles. I work with women going through menopause. I work with women who are going through trauma. So my work has varied over the years, but pretty much that's how I got into it. And it's been 10 years. Last year was 10 years, which was pretty exciting.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and that's where I am today. And I've helped high hundreds of women to fall pregnant. I've had lots of babies, and I've helped hundreds and probably thousands of women just to be able to thrive in their life again after living through trauma or having experiences that were unpleasant or just feeling stuck.
Yeah, that's so needed. And I love listening to that story. And I hear so many times from people, like, kind of out of your own personal story, myself included, um, creates this amazing connection to what you should be really doing. I think, and that comes up quite often, and that's lovely. Something we didn't mention is that you're actually based in Australia.
I
So,
am, yes.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So Edwina is all the way in Australia, and we're here in Canada. And this is great because we can talk to anybody all over the world with this lovely internet thing we have going on here. So I love the fact that we can actually discuss this. And it's great that you can teach this to the ladies as well. So do you actually like do this online as well, helping women sort of understand if they can do this for themselves? Like, or do you have to sort of do it for them?
No, I have a lot of programs for women one-on-one, and I work with them online and in the clinic. Obviously, if they're in Perth, WA, which is where I am, they can come and see me in the clinic, or when I travel. So I'm off to London later this year, and also I travel to Sydney quite frequently as well. Women can book in and see me in those areas.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
It's so needed. And honestly, I don't hear enough of these types of modalities. And like you mentioned, there's so much connected in there as well with the psychology and the emotions. So let's kind of unpack a little bit today of the menstrual cycle, because we're going to talk a little bit about how this mirrors the seasons. So can you sort of explain the four phases of the menstrual cycle, basically this menstrual, follicular, ovulatory, and luteal, and how they correspond to women's emotionals and the cycles that are going on?
Yes. This is something I'm so passionate about teaching, because every single woman, whether you are going through menopause, whether you are during pregnancy or whether you are a woman still menstruating, what I'm about to share with you is absolute gold if you can allow the light bulb moments to happen. So I'd love you to just take a moment to work out how many days your cycle is. So, in the medical world, 28 days is kind of like your average cycle.
Yeah.
Some women have shorter cycles and some people have longer cycles. So if you were to take your cycle, let's say 28 days, and divide that into 4, so we then have 4 quarters. And those 4 quarters are represented with what we call in womb and fertility massage spring, summer, autumn, and winter. So
Mm,
spring is your follicular stage, summer is your ovulation stage, autumn is PMT, and winter is your period. So, ladies, if you're out with your girlfriends for lunch and you're a little bit kind of taboo around talking about your periods, this is a great way to say, hey, I'm in winter, and the whole group knows what you're talking about. It means you've got your period, right? So
mhm.
with my friends and with my community, that's how we talk. It's like, oh, I'm in winter, I'm in spring, I'm in summer, so everybody knows where we're at, because I believe that if every woman and man knew which phase a woman was in, you would be surprised at how much more compassion and how much more love our
Yeah.
community would be, because you can have that empathetic understanding of where they're at in their cycle, which is so, so relevant. So,
Mhm.
how do they kind of go together? You've got these 4 seasons and they all have different meanings. And so, when we're thinking about when we're connecting into our winter, which is when we're bleeding, this is a time for women to really rest, okay? To rest, to be able to, like physically, your body is tired, you are exhausted, you're at a stage emotionally where you just don't care. So when you've got your period, you just don't care, right? If somebody wants to do something, you're like, whatever, I just don't care right now, because you're in that, whatever. So you really are kind of going within when you've got your period, okay? It's a time that you might, and you probably go through this as well, Bethany, when you've got your period, do you want to sit on the couch and watch TV and possibly eat chocolate? That's what women want to do, right? We just want to be with ourselves. We don't want to be around anyone. We don't want to do anything.
Yeah.
We just want to be in that space of just our own space, right? However, society, says otherwise. Shove a tampon up there and away we go. You can do anything, right?
Yeah.
But
you climb a mountain.
You can climb a mountain, 100%, right?
Yeah.
100%. But what's happening is we've come away from more of the traditional times when once upon a time, women used to, back in the hunters and gatherers stage, women used to be together in a village, in a community. The men would go off and hunt, and the women would go into the tent. The women that have gone through menopause, the elders, they would look after all the women that were menstruating. And they would all go into a tent. And what would they do in that tent? They would eat, they would sleep, they would sing, they would tell stories, and they would rest.
Sounds better.
Oh my God, doesn't it? But how often does that happen in modern world now?
No.
Right? And we wonder why women have irregular periods, heavy periods, cramping, clotting, headaches, pain. We wonder why people are getting endometriosis, polycystic ovaries, fibroids, can't fall pregnant. We wonder why.
Yeah.
This is why. And I'm sure you find that in your work as well with doing nutrition. I'm sure you find women are coming to you, they're burnt out, they're exhausted.
Yeah.
They haven't got any energy to keep going, right? And this all starts in the winter. This all starts here.
It makes me think of, like, I don't know what comes up, but it makes me think of like the modern society is pushing us into like a masculine energy that's not like meant for that phase of our cycle. So like what you just said, sort of, it's like, go out there and do something, you can, keep going. And it's like never that rest. You're allowed to rest kind of phase. So I feel like that explains a lot. And it doesn't help with the heavy bleeding or the cramping, or you just don't want to be around anybody. Like, it's just kind of like putting you into this like phase of like you're doing things not really because you want to, you kind of want to be in that restful stage. So very interesting.
Yeah, 100%. And the thing is that the women back in the day, they would come out, they would finish bleeding, and they would come out of the tent, and the men would greet them, obviously. And the women would be energized, motivated, clear. They would know where they're going. Okay. So because they've taken time to rest. But as I said, in modern day society, this is when you've got your bleed, it's a really good opportunity for you to do some deep processing and reflection on what's happened in your month. And I'll explain a bit more when I get around to autumn how that works. But allowing yourself to really be in that deep processing of what's not working for me. And I know when it comes to women trying to conceive, that is an ideal time to go, okay, am I going to do this next cycle? What do I need to maybe think about letting go to do this new cycle? Do I have, do I have the strength to do this next cycle? Or what is it that I need for me, right? So that winter time is a time for you to really connect in to yourself. But it also represents being reborn.
Interesting.
Okay, so every month you have an opportunity to let go of your emotions, and this is something men can't do. Let go of your emotions and keep moving forward. So how often do you come across, maybe even your imparter, how many times a man can say, or a woman can say to you, oh, you're due for your period. Oh yeah, she's got a period. She's got a period. Yep. And there's that connotation behind it around, oh, she's due for a period, because your mood changes, right?
Yeah.
And then as you go, and then when you go into your bleed, that all stops, all the crazy stops, all of the emotions stop, all of the overthinking stops, and you go into a bleed because it's a time to process and let it go. And then you
Mhm.
start the month again. And it's if we don't actually deal with what's coming up every month for us when we're in our autumn, then
Hmm.
we're going to keep carrying that through every single month. So I'll come back to talking about autumn, because this autumn is like your most
It seems
pivotal
like the
time in your
hardest.
period. Yeah, to be able to
Right.
really connect in and go, yeah, to be able to kind of like connect in and work out what's going on in your life that's not working. So that
Hmm.
would be in your PMT week, because by the time you bleed, you let it go. You're
Yeah.
back to normal, and then you carry on the cycle. But
Mm.
if you don't get enough rest in winter, you'll be falling behind the eight ball. So what I see in women is they come to see me and they're around ovulation and they're exhausted.
Yeah.
And I say, to the first question I'll ask them is, did you rest during your period? And if they say no, I'm like, okay, well, the reason why is because if we don't get adequate enough rest while we're on our bleed, if we don't get that rest, what happens is it takes longer for our hormones to be able to start to rise. And what
Hmm.
that means is we have a delayed, this is how I see cycles being pushed out, because we start to see a delay. We start to get into the follicular phase, where they should be, essentially, hormones should be rising. You should feel energized. If you've rested during your
Hmm.
bleed, you should feel energized. You should feel motivated. You should feel on top of your game. Because a lot of women don't rest, by the time they get to that season, there's no, they're still tired. So they're not actually hitting their peak hormones until where they should be ovulating, but then they're ovulating later. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's like I hear that often, and it's like you're skipping the phases because like what you said, it's really interesting. I'm just going to go back to that what you kind of said about the autumn, about how if you don't sort of deal with what you're dealing with, I guess it kind of comes up again. It's like the next phase in terms of the winter and stuff, it comes up. So I maybe I'm more in tune, but as you explained sort of that, like I could actually feel that what you just said in terms of um like the deep processing through the winter and like the
Mm,
reborn. And it's like energetically it's almost like I can't wait until sort of the winter because I'm trying to sort of go through the autumn faster. So I'm like, let's get this over with, you know. So it's interesting if you kind of miss a phase, it sort of shortens the next one.
100%. And you would probably see that when it comes to women that are in that A-type personality, corporate,
Yeah.
very high stress levels. Their period only lasts for 2 to 3 days, and then it's gone.
Yeah. Okay.
and
Interesting.
then and then they go straight into spring pretty much, right? But their energy and their energetics part of that is not in alignment, because they haven't given themselves enough time to rest, so they're almost skipping the winter, you know.
Right.
And a normal period bleed should be between 3 and 5 days. And if it's anything outside of that 3 to 5 days, like if it's more than 5 days, you're looking at a hormone imbalance is happening in your body. And if it's not, if you're bleeding less than 3 days, you don't have your endometrium lining is not actually working to the best of its ability. It means that your lining isn't thick enough because you're
Right.
shedding it too quickly. So, um, even just your menstrual period, your menstruation is going to be showing you what's going on with your body. But yeah, I see a lot of corporate women who are highly stressed, highly anxious, overthinking, perfectionists. They have a very short cycle, and that is because they're skipping their cycle because they're not getting enough rest.
Okay. Interesting. And a lot of it's interesting because a lot of things that you're saying makes a lot of sense. Did you want to keep going through each of the phases or would you
Yeah,
like to? Yeah, okay. So we
I'll
did
go
the
through them. So that's your winter. So then as we step into spring, now I'm talking about if you have had adequate enough rest, your spring should be fabulous. So
mhm.
when we take time out in the winter, and we by the time we get to spring, you're going to have more energy. So spring is the time when I'll say, if you want to overwork, if you want to do more, you should have the energy to do it. That springtime, you're coming out of the tracksuit pants, you're coming into, your stomach feels a lot more thinner. You want to wear clothes that are a little bit more tighter, but it is very much the energetics around it is very much, let's get stuff done. Let's get moving. I've had this rest, and now I'm wanting to get stuff done. It's like you've got your to-do list. You're very much goal orientated, wanting to focus. You might want to wear trousers because they represent that masculine energy. So you want to be like showing that you're kind of like who's boss in that time.
Right.
And I know for me, if I ask my husband to clear the dishwasher and I turn away for 1 second and I turn back and he's not clearing the dishwasher, I'm like, what? Come on, chop, chop. I want it done, and I want it done now, right? And that's the energy of the spring. It is pretty much that wanting to get stuff done, being able to, that motivation, that enthusiasm. It's a great time to socialize. You've come out of winter where you don't want to see anyone. You walk into spring and you want to be able to socialize. You're happy to socialize, you're happy to go out, you're happy to be in those kind of spaces, you're a bit more confident. And so that is that spring energy. And if you're trying to conceive, that's the time when you might be injecting, you might be taking your meds, you might be going to doctor's appointments, right? So it's a very much a doing season, and I find a lot of women like to get stuck here. So I won't go deeply into this. It might be for another podcast. But if you've got childhood trauma where you didn't feel like you were in control, and that could be connected to a lot of things, you'll find you love spring. And the reason why you love spring is because you're in control.
Interesting.
Yes.
Yeah, very much interesting. And it sounds a lot like very much an A-type person in general, like kind of trying to live in that phase too long.
Yes. Trying to get the control back that they didn't get when they were growing up. And I mean, in childhood, teenage years, if you didn't feel like you had control, then that's going to be a time when you really will thrive. It will be your best season. And you won't want to come out of that. And then what I find is then as we click over and we go into summer, which is our ovulation time, this is a time when we start to become, a lot softer, a lot more feminine. You notice that your clothing starts to become a little bit more, a little bit more sexier, a little bit more loose. This is traditionally the time when our bodies want to get pregnant. Whether we're trying to conceive or we're not, naturally our bodies will want to be taking our libido to a place where we're wanting to conceive, where we're wanting to have sex, we want to have pleasure, we want to have that juiciness. I often say I do see men in the clinic. They're usually my clients' husbands. And I say to them, if you want more sex, you need to make sure you understand these seasons I'm talking about and approach her when she's in her ovulation stage. Because ovulation is when she's going to naturally want to be intimate and have that sexual chemistry and relations with you. However, there's always a however. If if we haven't rested in that winter, you can see it how this is going to impact, right? Because you're still going to be in that, I'm not energetically refreshed, I feel exhausted still, and I'm pushing in that summer stage. And if you are not doing enough self-care for yourself, you're going to find that you're giving to everybody else and you're not giving to yourself. By the time you get to your summer, you're going to be exhausted. You're not going to want to have any kind of intimacy or sex or anything with your partner. But that kind of summer stage represents vulnerability, because your body wants to fall pregnant, whether you're trying or you're not trying. Naturally our bodies want to do that. And so it is more of a vulnerable time in your cycle. And again, if we've had trauma where we haven't had any control and you don't like being vulnerable, you're not going to love summer. So it's that I'll step into summer. This doesn't feel good. I don't feel in control. I'm feeling, I don't feel in control. I don't want to get into that space of wanting to have sex. So I'm going to just jump in there and jump the hell out. And a lot of women trying to conceive will put their toe into summer for the time when they're ovulating and then get the hell out because they don't want to stay in there because it's a vulnerable season. Does that kind of
Yeah,
resonate?
it's interesting. I didn't actually expect summer to be that emotionally vulnerable. But it makes sense, like you said, in terms of trauma, childhood trauma. It's a feeling of being maybe emotionally vulnerable, being more, I'd say, in a feminine area. And if again, it's like that trust, the polar opposite is the masculine. So, like you
Yeah.
said, I could understand why it's sort of dipping the toe in and then sort of, okay, like that's because it's like the mission is to fall pregnant,
Yeah.
right? So that's very interesting. I love how
And
you kind of explain that.
yeah, and also on leading more into that, the feminine, if there's any beliefs around weak women, feminine being weak,
Yeah.
you're not going to love summer. You're not
Yeah.
going to love that part of your cycle. And if you're working in a male orientated world,
Yeah.
you know, I'm talking about women that are in corporate or not in corporate, but if you're in a male dominated world and you can't show the softer feminine side, you're not going to love summer because it's about being vulnerable, emotionally vulnerable, opening up your heart, connection to self and to your partner. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's a huge, this, you know, there's just this huge, not, it's not safe to be vulnerable because that's associated maybe with weakness. And so we'll just dip our toe in summer, do what we need to do, and then get the hell out and head into our autumn.
Right.
Yeah.
And autumn is the hardest one so far that
Oh,
I know of.
autumn's my favorite. Autumn is my absolute favorite, but I will tell you it wasn't my favorite at the beginning, but it definitely explained a lot of things. And I think when I explained this season, I think so many of your listeners are going to go, oh my goodness, what light bulb moments is happening here. Our autumn, you will notice it's absolutely incredible at how you will notice the difference going from summer to autumn. You can wake up in summer in the day and you can by the end of the night be completely in autumn and know what's happening. Autumn starts, you'll start to get clumsy. Have you ever noticed that? You start to drop
Yep.
things, you start to forget things. You'll be midway sentence and you'll go, what was I talking about?
I did that while
Oh,
I
I've
was
forgotten.
pregnant too, badly.
Yeah. And I'll talk a little bit about the seasons with menopause and pregnancy afterwards as well, and that will really, really resonate with you. But yeah, you start to just forget mid-sentence, and it's awful, when you're, maybe someone like yourself who's in a role of facilitating and you're in the middle of a program and people don't understand the seasons and you just stop, go, oh goodness, I can't remember what I was talking about
Yeah.
now. And then all of the things come in.
Yeah.
It's just hilarious. But so yes, you start to become clumsy. You start to forget things mid-sentence. It's you can't think logically in autumn. You are completely irrational. Okay, you can fly off the handle, and anything you haven't dealt with emotionally for the 3 weeks prior, so your winter, your spring, and your summer. If you haven't dealt with any emotions or things that have bothered you or frustrated you or ticked you off, they'll show up in autumn.
Ah.
So I'll give you an example of this, and I teach this at all my things when I talk about the seasons. But my husband, God bless him, I love him dearly, right? And maybe there's some of your listeners out there or yourself that can resonate with this. We have a laundry basket. We have a laundry basket in our room. Now, as women, we would put the laundry in the basket. We would open the lid and stick it in. Okay. My husband seems to put them on top, to the side, to the back, everywhere but inside of the basket. So for 3 weeks, winter, spring, summer, not a problem. I just pick up the clothes and I stick them in the basket. But come autumn, now, if I've been stressed that month, if I've had a lot going on my plate, depending on where my levels of coping mechanisms are at that time, it's going to be, I'm going to walk in and I'm going to see those clothes on the floor and I'm just going to lose my, right? I'm going to lose it. It's not about the clothes. It's never about the clothes, right? It's about the fact that I have to pick it up. It's about the fact that it's extra work for me. It's about the fact that I'm tired and why is he not appreciating me? And we can get into so many beliefs around that, right? It's never about the clothes. But because I didn't deal with it for the 3 weeks before that, it's coming out in autumn because I'm not logical. I'm not rational. All my guards are down. I have no patience. I'm not tolerant. I'm clumsy. I forget things midway sentence. And I just can't, I'm just done with the world. By the time we get to autumn, we're done.
Yeah.
Is this making any sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good.
We just had this laundry conversation before we came on, so it's just ringing a bell.
Oh my God. Yeah. It is so amazing. I say to everybody that I meet, do not ever have any conversations that are important with friends, family, colleagues, just anybody in your autumn, because it will end badly. And I think that there'd be a lot less divorce in the world if people and in relationships understood this. Because my husband, God bless him now, right? He knows when I'm in autumn and he knows now not to press my buttons, not to poke the bear. And me being how I am, a bit impatient sometimes. If an issue's come up, I want to deal with it straight away. And he's just like, you know what? Let's just take a breath and we'll talk about it in a couple of weeks. Right? So he's in that, he's in it. Bless him. It's taken him a while, but he's there. But if we don't have partners that, partners or colleagues that are in that same space around that, well, then how could that go bad? That could result in major blow-ups where then the woman bleeds and then realizes, oh my God, what have I done?
Yeah.
Right? How many teenagers have had outbreaks in their PMT week and boys have called them crazy?
Yeah.
Oh, you're crazy. You're psycho. What do you think that's doing to their mental health and their beliefs, right? Or girls are like, being nasty and bitchy at work because she's in a bad mood. What if she's just in her autumn?
Yeah.
So we've got no compassion and no understanding of, like, a woman goes through these 4 seasons every month. The length of those are determined by the woman, right? Sometimes, like I was saying before, if you love control, you might want to be in spring for 10 days, pop into ovulation into summer for 3 days, spend, I'm terrible with maths, so I'm just, anyway, 10 days I'm spending in autumn because autumn's, where I'm going to get all my stuff out, and then I'm going to bleed for a short amount of time. So depending on what season you really like will depend on how long you're in that season for.
Man.
Right? Emotionally, you will flow with your season. It's not just like 28 days, 7 days, 7 days, 7 days, 7 days.
Yeah.
It will be different depending on the person. And when we're in autumn, this is your opportune time to sit with these things that are annoying you. And if there's anger coming up here, dealing with that anger and that frustration, because otherwise all you're doing is bleeding and forgetting about it and going through it again the next stage. And what I see is, this is scary. What I'm going to say is scary. But ladies, if you do not deal with your stuff, if you do not deal with your trauma, your emotions, the way you feel every month, when you stop bleeding, you will be stuck permanently in autumn. I'm going to repeat that. If you don't deal with your emotions, your trauma, whatever comes up for you in autumn, when you stop bleeding, you get stuck there. Now, I want you to think about your mothers and what they were like in perimenopause, because that's where you're heading if you don't deal with your stuff.
Yeah.
If you do go through, if you work with a professional on your emotions and how you're feeling, and physically and emotionally, like both of them, then you'll find that perimenopause will be a lot more pleasant for you and your family if you do that. But if you don't, menopause, you're stuck in that. That's where you'll stay.
That is pretty scary. It's interesting listening to that. Like, I could totally relate to so many things on there, and also just clients and everything as well. Just like, and how women can really shift their own cycles themselves, and why women also align up with each other during
Mm-hmm.
cycles and stuff as well. Like, I find that super fascinating. We kind of touched on like the physical and emotional changes. Are there specific like do's and don'ts during each phase of the cycle? Because like you mentioned, sort of people around sort of being aware of those, like the autumn time, and maybe letting them rest more so during winter. Is there anything sort of that comes up in terms of like nutrition, exercise, more rest during each season?
Yes, there's do's and don'ts to do in each cycle. When we're in our winter, when we're in our bleed, it is a time for more rest. So you want to be able to rest. You want to be able to do that deep processing and reflection. Um, what you don't want to do is lots of exercise. So you can exercise as in go for a walk, do just really low impact exercise when you're bleeding, but you don't want to be doing anything high impact because
Yeah.
your womb doubles in weight when you're bleeding. So a couple of days before your period's due, your womb starts to become heavier, and this is how we can lead to pelvic heaviness. This is how we can feel more pressure in our pelvis when we're about to bleed. So I don't recommend you do any heavy, hard impact exercise just before your period's due and also while you're bleeding, because it's not actually good for your physical body. So it's not good. So what you don't want to do is have lack of sleep while you're on winter, or do those high impact exercises. You don't want to be working long hours or starting new projects in winter either. It's just a time to rest. It's a time to recoup and rebirth. When we come into spring, the things that you are going to be really good at is prioritizing and doing lists. Okay. And if you want to exercise and do cardio, go for it. Go hell for leather, because that is definitely the time that you want to do that. Start new projects. If you're it's interesting that with IVF cycles, they start from as we're coming into the follicular stages, we're stepping into spring, we're starting that process, right? We're starting that process, and so it is a time to start new projects. Start the gym. Start the gym in your spring. Start the house renovation. Start the decluttering. Try and start it in spring, because if you try and start it in autumn, it will go pear-shaped, believe me. The things you don't want to do in spring is support your friends or your family on an emotional level, because you will be not in the headspace. You have your beer goggles on, you've got your tunnel vision, you know what you want to do in spring, and that's what you're doing. And anybody else, you don't have time to. So Bethany, if you rang me when I'm in my spring and you're like, oh, Edwina, I've got some emotional things going on, the type of response you're going to get from somebody normally in spring is going to be that a little bit more like less tolerant, less impatient, a bit more like, we'll just do this,
Yeah.
and you're probably like wanting the sympathetic, empathetic kind of compassion. You don't have that in spring. You're like, get the job done. And
Yeah.
that's very masculine, but that's
Yeah.
the energy of spring. When we come to summer, in summer, if you rang me when I'm in my summer and you said I'm having an emotional problem, I would be all like, come round, let's have a cup of tea, let's talk it through. In summer, you've usually got that ability to have that space if you're filling your cup normally. Okay. If you're not filling your cup, you're not. Summer, you can exercise. Summer, you can still get the cardio going. You can still be exercising. Just be mindful if you are trying to conceive that you're not overheating your body, because we don't want to be doing too much. In your summer, you can understand people's feelings and emotions, but it's not a good time to be like working overtime or bringing work home in your summer, or trying to be really like motivated towards material goals and things. It's not really going to be something that's going to be working for you in summer. When we get to autumn, this is another thing in autumn, you usually want to start the decluttering process because you want to tidy, you want to make space, you want to bring order, okay? You want to clear out You want to be like looking into what you want to let go of, what do you need to clear out, what mental behaviors, what patterns do you want to let go of. And also, as I said, autumn's probably not the time to be doing any heavyweight exercises, because you're, as you get closer to menstruating, your womb is doubling in weight. Autumn is not the time to fix problems. It's not a time to start new projects, lifestyle, diets, or understanding something logical or rational. It won't happen.
Yeah.
So there's some of the do's and the don'ts around the cycles of what to do and what not to do. And, as for a woman, with the cycles with sex, in autumn, if there's any men that are listening, in autumn, you have to go by your partner's choice. It has to be her choice in autumn, whether she does or she doesn't want to. In
Mm-hmm.
summer, she's probably more susceptible to it, because it's the body's naturally wanting to step into, falling pregnant, and your libido is normally a lot higher. If it's a bit of a loaded question, because I know a lot of women that don't have a high libido or any libido when they come to summer, and there's a lot of emotional things connected to that. So it's a loaded question. And in spring, yes, there's probably more chances, if they've got the energy sexually, they'll be wanting to, get involved as well. So there's certain times of the cycle when to and when not to approach a woman, and obviously menstruating is a no. It's usually a time when they just want to rest and everything, not wanting to be touched, not wanting to give energy or receive energy during that restful
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
Very interesting. How does a woman's personality and behavior typically shift during each of these cycles? Like, are there certain tendencies to emerge depending on if it's winter or summer? This is where we kind of talked a little about like relaxing a little bit more kind of in the winter, and then going into sort of like spring and summer is a little bit more like, it seems like it kind of goes into like the masculine. It feels like a lot more women are sitting in that area a little bit more and trying to sort of avoid having to sort of go back to that feminine again. Does that sort of come across to you in your practice?
Yes, yes. I mean, it does depend on the woman, and it also depends on what her lifestyle is. But yes, that springtime is definitely a masculine place to be. And I guess what I say to clients that are in a space where they're sitting more in their masculine than they are in their feminine is to start to notice your cycles. Start to become aware. You will notice the change from going from winter to spring. You'll be tired in the winter, and then you'll start to get your energy back. So you know that you're moving into spring.
Right.
You know, as we move into summer, your energy levels will peak higher. You'll start to get a little bit more energy as we stepping into the summer. But you'll also notice that you step away from the to-do list, and you'll start to notice your behaviors become a little bit more loose.
Mm-hmm.
And as we step into autumn, it's like in the morning, you can be all loose and fluffy and amazing. And by that night, you can be angry and bitter and frustrated, right? It's a
Yeah.
very quick, you'll know the minute you step from summer into autumn, you will know. You'll start to drop things. You'll start to become irrational. Naturally, your body will just start to show you you're in that season.
Yeah.
And
It's
then
interesting.
in the autumn, the emotions, the feelings, it becomes so intense. There's nowhere left to go. And then a lot of the time you'll hear women say, "Oh my God, I was just losing my mind. Like, what is wrong with me?" And then the next day they get their period.
Yeah.
So the behaviors and the emotions and the physical are all tied in. You will, if you start to become more aware, you will notice when you're in the next season.
It's so funny because as you say that, like, I don't know if it's because there's more of a drastic change, like if you're in tune with your body, but like what you said is that going from sort of morning, you can feel great, have lots of energy, to sort of the evening, and all of a sudden just something changes and you feel super irritated all of a sudden, and your body's like, nope, this is like, and it's kind of just like this wall that like hammers down. And again, like what you said, like kind of you go into this like, I just want to be on my own, I don't want your energy, I don't want to give my energy. Like, it's very interesting. And never ever thought it was in my head, because I think, you know, you hear about all these things, but it doesn't get talked about. Like, you know what I mean? Like, when you you know, look this up, and there's more so like moon cycles and things like that, but women in general, I don't hear this often. It's more just around sort of the I guess like the mood swings, and the what they talk about, like the physical aspects of like having acne and headaches, and it's just kind of more of those like symptom check off lists. And it's
Yeah.
not really, you know, talking about sort of like what you said, the transitions into different things. How can women use like this understanding of the menstrual cycle to really like optimize their daily lives? I have clients that ask me this, from their work to the relationships to personal self-care and even for fertility. Because I have clients that say like, there's, I don't know when I should start a project or like back off from work, but I'm actually hearing them doing this throughout their month. So this will be interesting to hear.
Yeah. So the main thing where it all starts is winter. Winter is your most, that's where you're going to do all the groundwork for how your month's going to work out. So if you're still tired in summer, you haven't rested enough in your winter. Now, look, don't get me wrong, I've got 2 kids, a business, I'm studying at university, and I'm doing all of the things. So I am totally aware of the modern day woman,
Yeah.
okay, and how difficult it can be to find time for ourselves. So I don't want anyone thinking, um, you know, that it's not a struggle for me, because it is. But what I've come to realize in all my years is that I have to make it a priority,
Yeah.
right? We don't, time just doesn't turn up. We don't
Hmm.
just wake up one day and all of a sudden we've got loads of time. If we
Yeah.
want to make a change, we actually need to make it a priority. And that's what I do. So when I've got my period, you know, there's so many apps these days that you can know when you're getting your period and all that. But whenever I've got my period, I kind of look at it and go, okay, I need to rest more. So what can I do? What can I control in that? Okay, could I perhaps make a couple of meals in my spring when I'm feeling like really energized and really pumped, that I put in the freezer for when I come to winter? Can my partner cook dinner over those couple of days and sort that out? What is the least amount of work I can do at work, right? I need to go to work from 9 to 5. Okay, great. But I'm not working overtime. I'm not working through my lunch break. And
Hmm.
I'm going home at 5 o'clock. I'm making some of those strong boundaries
Yeah.
when you've got your period. When I get home, I might go for a short walk. I'm not gonna push myself. I'm gonna have a bath, and I'm gonna go to bed early. And these are the foundations to set you up for your entire month. Comes down to winter, right? So what can I do in winter that's going to really help my month? Now I see this when I'm tired still midway through the cycle, I look back and go, what did I do in winter? I can tell straight away.
Mm,
And this goes for my clients as well. So it's,
yeah.
you need sleep, you need rest, you need comfort, you need to nutritious. So what can I do? What can I control in that every month to give myself that?
Mhm.
If your period falls on a weekend, don't go out. Don't socialize. Give yourself at least the first 3 days of your period to just be with yourself as much as you can, as much as you can. Obviously, you know, if there's an event you have to go to, you have to go to it. But what are the boundaries and the rules around that I can protect myself with? So so when people want to make changes, the first step, because it can become overwhelming, is to start there. You
Mhm.
know, start with that. And then as you kind of go through all of the seasons, it's just becoming aware of when you're in that season, looking at the do's and the don'ts, right? Look at the do's. I'm happy to give you a worksheet, if you like, Bethany, that you can put up or you can
Yeah,
give to clients
that'd be
that
great.
has the do's and don'ts. And you can, until they, people understand what the do's and don'ts are, you can have it on your fridge and go, okay, I'm in my spring. This is what I should do, and this is what I shouldn't do. And it's
Mhm.
about working to that advantage. So you know that in your spring you can go hard. So do longer hours at work in your spring so that you can do shorter hours at the other end of the month. So it's just navigating from what I've said, navigating through each of the sections and kind of going, how can I use this to my advantage? Work on the do's and less on the don'ts. And if you do that, you know, like if you can avoid having staff meetings when you're in your autumn,
Yeah.
it's probably for the best, you know,
Yeah, that's
you know
that's
what I mean?
hilarious. It's it rings a lot of bells in my head, and listening to clients as well, where they're at, and you can kind of tell when you're talking to them as well, like, and other women, because I think other women are typically in tune with other women usually. Um, and it's funny because as you're sort of saying that, I naturally sort of do those things like what you just said, like having those few days of just like wanting to be in my room and just kind of those comforts, those blankets, that warmth. Like I'm
Mm,
looking for that comfort. And sometimes, like I said as well, is I live with, all boys in our house, and it's it's hard because it's like you have the sort of the girl flagpole going on, and everyone's sort of like, what's going on with her? And it's, I think the men as well, like, need to sort of be a little bit more in tune and understanding where their moms are at, sisters are at, partners are at, in terms of like understanding. And I think I usually just say to my boys, like, it's like I can't take any information in. Like, the kids
no.
will ask me so many questions. I'll be in the middle of cooking dinner because it's like you have to feed them. And as I'm like making dinner, I've got so many things going on in my head. And then like one question will be asked, and I'll be like, just give me a minute. And they're like, okay. Like, and I know that's you.
Yeah.
And it's usually dinner for some reason. Whenever I'm making dinner, it's like I'm in autumn. Like, I need to just like back off, give them what they need, and like go into like that hibernation mode, because that's kind of where I go with that. So I find that pretty funny.
You know what? It is so funny when you start to listen to these things and understand them, and the light bulbs go off, and then you apply them to your own world, and you go, "Oh my God, that's what's happening." The best thing you can do is teach your boys how to look after a woman when they're on their bleed, instead of the modern day society saying just give her a tampon and away she goes. She can do
Yeah.
anything. Like my son, bless him, he'll like go get a blanket. He'll ask, do you want a cup of tea or something like that. He'll do the
Oh,
dishwasher for his sister, like
yeah.
the men in our household have had to learn this is how we treat women, and
Yeah.
even my daughter's boyfriend, he goes, he's probably not the best, advocate for, he'll go and get her hot chips or something if she's got a period or something
Yeah.
like that and bring them to her because that's what she wants,
Yeah.
bless. But it's that learning, this is how we help women to thrive.
Yeah.
If you can understand your cycles and you can use them to your own ability and teach the people in your life about them, it's so much better.
Yeah. I think when you think about it, I think the older guys are kind of more aware, I think, and they're like, "Oh, I'll get you chocolate. Like, what do you want? What do you want? What can I do to make you happy?" So I
Yeah.
think it's sort of like years of trained, I guess, of being aware that they don't want to fall victim, I guess, to that person that's
Mhm.
very on edge, I guess, in autumn. And they know they don't even have to ask. I think sometimes, I think they can just tell in your personality, and you're not the same as you normally are. You are, and yeah, I think it's just teaching younger boys as well, like the same thing, like, getting your mom or your sister a blanket, a nice cup of tea, maybe just like, turn your music down a little bit or something, because it's the annoyance, I think, around
Mm.
well, and it's like you're trying to sort of all thrive and live in the same household. So I love how you kind of brought all this perspective in. So I really appreciate it. So thank you for coming on today, Edwina. Where can our listeners find you?
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. I hope that they've taken away something today.
Yeah.
I know you have. So hopefully they will too. The best place to find me is on Instagram. I'm there regularly, and there's usually quite a lot of posts and information and tools, and all that is up on Instagram. So it's the best place to find me, which is just at Edwina Taylor Wellbeing. And then I've also got my website, which is just my name, edwinataylor.com.au, if anybody wants to look into working with me. As I said, I do online and in person. So yeah, I'd be happy to have a chat with anybody who has found this podcast interesting, or if they want to share something, just come over to Instagram and send me a DM. I'd love to hear from you.
I'd love that. I'd love to also get that do's and don'ts worksheet if we can put that into the show notes. So everybody that has come to listen today will actually have all of Edwina's stuff in the show notes here for you as the listeners. So everybody stay tuned for our next episode, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss a show. In good health, everybody.